Ooh. Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your alternator on a 2004 Toyota Avalon. First thing we need to do is disconnect the battery, and that's usually just a 10mm wrench, but if the cables have been changed, it might be something different. Just make sure that that ground is out of the way, not going to make contact with that terminal on the battery. Alright, and then on the alternator itself, there are two connectors here. This one is just you just press in on the side of this. It's kind of like a squeeze tab, and pull it out like that. And then this is just a little plastic cap. If you just lift that, it'll usually just come up. Sometimes it breaks, and then that's usually a 10mm nut on there as well. And we can loosen that. I'm just going to put the nut back on there so I don't lose it. Now I don't know if you can see it, but there's also down here there's a little plastic connector, and if you just take a little flathead screwdriver, sometimes you can just get in on one side of it and disconnect that. Just kind of squeezing that little plastic thing and trying to press it so that it comes out over here. Trying to do it without breaking it. A lot of times the plastic is brittle and they do break. There we go. Okay, now to loosen the tension on this pulley, we just need to come down here with a 12mm socket or wrench, and this is a little, I don't know how well you can see that on the camera, but this is a little adjuster. That's how you tighten the belt or loosen it or take the tension off. And that's a 12mm there, but before we do that, before we can loosen it, we've got to loosen up that bolt in the front here. This actually has to come out completely. Alright, now that's loose. I'm gonna take the tension off of it with this here, but actually it's probably not going to move until I loosen up this 14mm here. This bolt has to come out, but I'm just going to loosen it for right now. Just a few turns on that one so that we can loosen the tension. Now I found this is easiest to use a few extensions here. Get down on there. Might have to use a wobble extension. Now see, this is helpful to have a wobble extension. You can see that moves a little bit, so it gives us a little bit, it's almost like a universal joint, but just gives us a little bit more room to turn this here. And you can see now we're getting some slack in that belt, but let's keep going until we can easily slip the belt off of the alternator pulley. And that looks like it's just about enough to slip that belt off. And just kind of let that belt hang off to the side there. Alright, now we can take out this 14mm bolt here up at near the bracket here. You can set that aside. Now sometimes this bracket here, sometimes it helps to loosen it a little bit so that there's not so much pressure on this and lining that up. You can usually pry it off, but we still have the bolt in the bottom to loosen up, but just gonna want to loosen this bolt right there, or this nut there. We got a little bit more room, and just kind of swivel that up and out of the way. And then we have our 12mm bolt in the bottom part of the alternator that still needs to come out right down here. You can loosen that up the rest of the way. This one here is threaded into the alternator as well, so just back it out until it comes loose. There we go. We can set that aside. We should be able to pull this up and out now. Just going to pull these wires up out of the way so we can get this loose. There we go. I'm going to pull off this connector here off the timing cover. Move that out of the way a little bit. Just a little plastic connector. There we go. Just kind of got to move it around a few times, but there we go. That's the old alternator. Alright, now I know what you're thinking. This alternator is a lot dirtier than the one that I took out, which is true. But I happen to have this. I pulled it off of a different Avalon that was headed to the junkyard, and it was in working condition when I took it off, so that's what I'm going to be putting on this one this time. So just kind of drop it down in there and try to turn that, get it lined up. I'm going to see if I can get this bolt started in here first to get it lined up. We'll just get that started, but I'm not going to torque that down to make sure we get everything else lined up first. This cable right here, I'm just going to put that right back where it was, and then we can put in the bottom bolt. Try to just get that started by hand first. This is sometimes tricky to line up, and there's another 12mm bolt holding this bracket stiff or holding it steady. It's connected down there. Sometimes to loosen that will make this a little bit easier to line it up. This bottom bolt again is a little tricky sometimes because you got to get it through the little slider piece down here. Again, this is not easy to show. Just get that started and nice and snug. Okay. Then we can put our belt back on. Just make sure that that is lined up properly on the other pulleys down below. Alright, and then with our 12mm socket on a wobble extension, we can tighten this bolt until that belt is as snug as we like. I'm going to cheat on this one and use the drill. And I like to just tighten that belt until you can barely turn it a little bit, you know, kind of like perpendicular to itself by hand. And that's nice and snug. And then we can torque down our other 12mm bolt down here. Don't go too crazy with the torque on that, but just make it snug. Same thing with this 14mm here. You can tighten that down. Okay, now we can take this connector here and just press it in place till it snaps, like that. And then take the nut off of the post here. Put our cable back on. This has got these two little pieces that kind of press down into these little grooves or channels down there. And then put our nut back on. Tighten that nice and snug. This little plastic cap back on there. And then you see this little plastic tab right here that kind of keeps those wires out of the way or from getting in the in the way of anything. This snaps into place. And we can put our ground cable back on. Nice and snug. I just realized a mistake I made. I was kind of rushing and I forgot to put this this little bracket back down there. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this 14 millimeter bolt. See if I can't get this back underneath there where it goes. Looks like it'll be easier just to pull off this 12 millimeter completely, because that's a closed end on this little metal piece, this little metal bracket. But that's what that looks like. See if we can't sneak that underneath there. Looks like I need to loosen that 14 millimeter just a little bit more. But watching my mistake, hopefully you guys can not make the same one. There we go. That's what happens when you do things in a hurry. Get that 12 tightened up. And of course this guy here. Okay, now you're done. Thanks again for watching. Hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. I guess I should have mentioned the symptoms on this one before starting, but we had a battery light on the dash and tested the voltage of the alternator just at the battery. The output was really just right around battery voltage, or right around even 11. It was kind of dropping. Car was just running on the battery itself, not really getting anything out of the alternator. But already started this and tested it, and we're up to about 14 volts. So we're getting some healthy output from the alternator and should be good to go. Well, thanks so much for watching, and good luck.